Addison Central School Board meeting to order. The current time is 6:32. With all meetings, we start with introductions, so I'll start with you, Brian.
Brian
Joanna Doria. Ellie Round.
Jamie McCallum.
Steve Borzak.
Sam Bott. Laura Hartman.
Trisha Allen.
Jason Childs. Chip Malcolm.
Barb Wilson.
Tim Williams.
Will Hatch.
And admin in the room.
Courtney Braun.
Excellent, thank you, everyone. Next on our agenda is a motion to adopt the agenda. And in approving tonight's agenda, I would like to introduce a Robert's Rules of Order concept that we haven't used before with this board. I know the old board has used it called unanimous consent. It'll help us save some time as we have agenda items that are minor in nature, such as approving agendas. And the way it basically works is that we make a motion to approve it, and then I will say if there's no objections that are raised, that the motion is considered approved without the need to have a formal vote, right? And so we can use that, so I thought, let's start and practice this. So can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll move to adopt the agenda as warned.
Second.
Okay. If there's no objections, then the motion is considered approved. And if there is an objection, you can actually say so, and then we will actually do a formal vote.
Can I ask a question about this?
Yes.
I don't know when. Is this the time? Like, so I remember emailing about this after our policy committee
Yeah.
meeting. Can someone add? I'm not going to, but can someone add an agenda item during this time?
If they can propose an
They
agenda
can.
item,
Okay.
but it needs a 75% vote to add it to the agenda, according to Robert's rules.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so we'll start doing this for, some of the agenda items, such as the budget, the minutes, that kind of thing. Okay, so next is public comments on agenda items. This is the time that we invite the public to comment on agenda items. We limit it to 3 minutes. So first, I would like to invite anyone in the room, if they want to make a comment, please raise their hand.
Bob, may I interrupt? Mary Heather cannot hear the webinar at all. She's
Okay.
online, but she can't hear.
Okay, so let's put a hold.
Definitely on.
Okay, well, just keep going. I told her I would take minutes as best I can, as well as keeping track of motions, so I'll try.
And let me check my,
I wonder if the other attendees can hear. This happened in the facilities meeting, and can you allow Mary Heather to talk? It's that I think fixed the glitch. If you allow her to talk and see if we can hear her, and then all of a sudden it started working.
yeah, we had to actually ask,
I mean, she's.
Go to the 3 dots.
Ask.
go to the 3 dots.
Yeah.
And actually, did we actually make them a co-host or
Panelist.
something?
I think we made Wendy like
A co-host. So why don't we try that?
nope, can't hear you.
Can she hear now?
Can you hear us now?
We can't hear you.
We can't hear her either. Technology, don't we love it?
We're definitely getting sound.
I'm gonna have her log out and log back in.
Maybe have her come in through the webinar, the actual Zoom link,
Yeah.
where you set up the meetings.
We should ask Emily if she can.
Yeah, ask Emily if she can.
Sorry, guys. And that's on, correct? It looks on. The owl looks like it's on.
No, yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Maybe that's why you can hear yourself on your computer.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There was,
So she's gonna log out, log back in, and see if it works. So why don't we just continue, and she and I will continue our chat.
she could log into Zoom maybe and come in via that link.
That's, so she's working on it.
Okay, great. So any public comments in the room? And let's go to attendees. And hopefully, did we confirm that folks can actually hear us?
Did you hear back from Emily?
I'm-
She said she can hear us.
Okay, excellent. If anyone that is attending via Zoom would like to make a public comment, please raise their hands.
Mary Heather.
Still can't hear.
And we still can't hear. That's unfortunate. Okay, seeing none, we'll continue. The next item is the recommendation to approve the April 8th meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the April 8th minutes?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Who did the second? Sorry.
I did,
Chip.
well, I don't know.
It was between Jamie and Chip. Okay, so if there is no objection, the minutes are approved as submitted. It's okay if you object, and then we'll go through the process.
Was somebody objecting?
Okay, so we can continue on. See how fast that is? Next, approve ACSD bills. I'm going to hand it off to Chip.
One set of bills were read on the 15th of April by Jason and myself. First was a general account, general fund bill of totaling $300,430.79. Second was a payroll of $957,177.65. So then I don't have to make a motion
We can make a motion.
You have to make a motion.
Yeah, we can make a motion.
to, okay, I'll make a motion to approve them as read.
And Jamie seconded it. And in this particular case, if there's no objection, the bills are approved as reported. Excellent.
You want these?
Could I just, because Mary Heather needs the numbers. and I-
Next, on our agenda, we have board education, and we have Mark Coney. Did I say that last name right? Did I kill it? Did
The
I?
OE sounds like an A.
The what?
Koenig.
Koenig. Okay, oh my
But I
God.
answered
I am
Koenig.
so sorry. I am so
Standard.
sorry. I would like to introduce and welcome Mark. Mark is a member of the Addison Northwest School District and one of our Addison County Regional VSBA representatives. He also served on the task force that was in charge of developing the AOE governance rules. And he's agreed to come and kind of walk us through the rules and kind of lead discussion around the rules. As you notice, I labeled this as education. So what I want to start doing is, instead of just having education at a retreat, that we actually have it throughout the year. And we talked about that at the executive committee, and like monthly possibly, or maybe every other month, we would have a topic of education. Okay, so trying to follow those rules. So, and if you could bring up those charts, that would be awesome, Will. And so what we're just going to project is the handout that I've distributed a couple times, which is the Vermont School Board Association. It was part of the training. And we'll just use that as a backdrop. And what we can do is then scroll in several slides. If we just move it forward about 3 slides, since we're reusing. Yeah, keep going, keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah, right here.
There we
That
go.
would be perfect. Okay, Mark, it's all yours.
All right, I can wander around, which is I'm apt to do, but then the owl follows me, so if it's okay with you, I'm just gonna stay here. So my name is Mark Koenig. As Barbara said, I'm one of your rival districts. I've been on the school board since we consolidated along with Suzanne. I am one of your Addison reps for the DSBA, and then as we all have come to know and love Act 127, one of the subsets of that was this. So buried deep, deep within Act 127, it was decided that AOE should put together some guidance for governance of school boards, facilities management, and financials. And AOE reached out to VSBA and said, hey, do you guys want to take the first crack at putting together what you think are good governance standards for a school board? And I got a phone call saying, hey, we know you've heard cats, we have to do this in 4 meetings. Do you want to do it? So we put together a task force of school board members from across the state, and in a matter of about 10 hours, we developed these standards. We started off by dividing into buckets what we thought were the main components of a good school board, and then created some subsets of each one with an eye towards what helps a school board function, but not to the degree where we are saying these are the 7 specific things you must do on this time frame. So, we have at least annually, the board sets measurable goals and regularly reviews them. You figure out the goals. You figure out what regularly means. You do that, but it's a good idea to have some goals and to look back and figure out if you're hitting those goals. So those are the standards. So we decided priorities, protocols, and processes were the 3 main buckets, kind of overreaching and then narrowing down the focus of what a school board would want to do. And Barbara reached out to me and said, we'd like to try and figure out how to best implement these. I've given a couple of talks. My biggest piece of advice is that of the, I think there's 16, 14 steps, you can't do them all at once. This is a 5 to 7 year process if you're not already doing some of these things. So the first trick is to figure out which ones do you think your board would most benefit as a good building block, and get those in place, and then next year try and pick another 1 or 2 and see where you are. You might also look through, there's a self-evaluation, which I think Barb passed out. If you all agree, you strongly disagree that you're doing 13.2.2, great. Check that one off, and you can just go back and review it later, make sure you're still feeling great about it in a couple of years, but you kind of work your way along. The 2 that I would say, or probably 3, given that you've got a new superintendent coming, would just be within your priorities. Set your goals, figure out what your goals are and how you're going to measure those goals. I would say figure out how your students are doing, because that's why we're here. If you didn't have what your students are doing, there's no reason for a board to exist. And then you've got a new superintendent, it would probably be great to have your process of how you're going to evaluate that person as they're going forward to day 1. You've got this process set up, you work with that superintendent on how they feel they'll be evaluated, you get set goals for that superintendent, you work with probably a subcommittee that's going to talk to it and figure out your process for there. But since you're going to be a brand new person, it makes sense that you might want to set that in place, starting right there. And that's 3 out of the group, right? Right to the start.
And one thing, just following up on that, we hired Mac and Jay to help us with the superintendent search. So this fall, Judy, the consultant, will come back, and part of the contract that we paid for was to sit down with the superintendent and the board to work on the goals for the first year. You know, so we'll have some help and some expertise in doing that.
It's a good thing to do. That's, you know, our district, we have a superintendent evaluation subcommittee. And the superintendent comes to this committee at a certain time during the year and says, these are the 3 or 4 goals I really want to focus on this coming year. And we kind of go back and forth. And maybe one's not as important to the board, we'd rather have something over there, we'll come to an agreement. But then she knows what we're specifically looking at. Obviously, we judge her on her contract. She's got a whole lot of things, but we're not going to spend 80% of our evaluation on something that we didn't warn her was going to be a top priority. So I'm more interested in what you all want to talk about, because I can just ramble on and it wouldn't make a difference, and you all have lives on a gorgeous day, so I can make this short and sweet, or we can go as long as you want. But if there are questions or concerns that you have about this system, I don't want to just go through and read each one to you and say, that's a good one.
Go ahead, Joanne.
How have you or your school board prioritized the 14 to 16 steps? Like, what's the process you went through to sort of see what was the beginning of the 5 to 7 year process?
One of the nice things about being the chair of the task force was that a lot of it was based on what I already knew. And so we did a lot of how Addison Northwest already runs, but we have gone, like, the 8 years we've been in existence have been painful learning lessons. And I think that the biggest things that we have done are try to deal with the things that are essential to a school board staying in existence. So we had to make sure our finances were in order. What is it that, how do we want to measure student achievement? Like, what are we looking at? And so, you know, to the education portion of both the governance and what you're doing here and what I'm chatting about, we have at least once a month, somebody within the school comes and brings us information. We talk for 45 minutes or so. You know, last meeting we had a group of 7th graders that came and presented on the youth risk survey. And they have a group in the school that they are working with the middle schoolers to talk about bullying and self-harm and suicidal thoughts and trying to figure out how we can lower the numbers that we have. We're not outrageously high and most of our stuff and our numbers are below the state average, but some kid thinking about suicide, anything over 0 is too much. So they're working and they told us how they're doing it. So that let us know what the numbers were. It was a different way of talking about the youth survey, because sometimes it's just somebody from admin coming in, the counselors. We have a number of our policies require the superintendent to bring us yearly reports, and we have on an ongoing rotation, she or designee brings us how is, you know, SPED doing, how is food service doing, and so we have these people come and they give a presentation, and that brings us up to date about what's happened, what's going right, what's going wrong, what kind of money we're talking about. You know, obviously we try and time the major budget things come to us right before we start talking budgets so that we can start evaluating those things.
Question, how deep do these reports go?
As
Is it
deep
just
as they want to bring
over
us.
the surface, or do they go deep?
They, a little of both. I mean, we only give them about 45, 50 minutes. And it's usually a PowerPoint presentation, so there's a lot of data there that they will give us the 30,000-foot discussion, but if someone raises a hand and says, I'm looking at line 17 there, and I don't understand that number, then we're down in the weeds.
Is it a possibility of getting that information before the?
We always have it before.
Oh, okay, excellent.
We see the presentation beforehand so that you can kind of look through it, but you know, a lot of it is in academic lingo, and so you're like, I don't know what a CX43 is. Can you explain that? Even though I've heard it every year, I don't remember that one. And then so the superintendent makes sure that she hits all the reports that she is required by our own policies to present us, that is really our education.
And then you people can give them questions to
Mhm.
answer after the presentation.
Yeah.
They can go on and get those answers for you.
Absolutely. And sometimes, like, I have been known to just set up a meeting with one of the people in admin or one of the teachers that did it and say, hey, I really want to learn more about this. Can I stop by? And they'll walk me through more. So I'm not going in to give them direction, I'm going in to learn. So it's okay for a one-on-one board member to just kind of head in. I'm not saying, all right, this is how I want you to change this program. That would be out of line, but for me to learn more is usually helpful. So I think the first step, if you haven't already, to take, it's just a 2-page self-evaluation. And it has each one of these priorities listed on it, and it's just a 1 to 5. How do you think personally you feel the board is doing on this? If you don't even understand the question, probably not doing it.
Right.
And if you are like, yeah, this is good, and then you just do a number crunch and figure out where the board as a whole is and how they think you're doing. And then you can decide amongst yourselves, well, what really seems like we are missing that would, if we had known this information last year, would have made this year so much easier. And you build on those 1 or 2 things. Do not try and take off more than you can chew, because it just is going to be a disaster. Because you'll have too many things going on, and they'll all be so-so, and it won't feel good, and nothing will be so. Even though there is a long list of stuff, you got time.
Right.
Just realize it's going to be 3 or 4 boards down the road that will start reevaluating things that you're doing in the first step to say, okay, are we still happy with what we set out? And more than likely, and this is a good thing, you won't be happy with how it was, because you're taking this thing you've never done, you broke it into a big chunk, you got it set, you got some other things in place that now mean you can go back and refine the first one and narrow down the focus or break it into subparts. And each iteration makes it a little more understandable. Like the reports I was just talking about, when our people come in and tell us, 7 years ago, it was, this is what this program means, this is what this acronym does. And now we're to a point where we all have a very good understanding of the foundation. We can dig a lot deeper into what that actually means and how is that different from last year and what are we planning for next year. But there's no way, if they come with the level that they tell us now, 7 years ago, we would have had no idea what was being said.
Mark, how do you bring new board members, like if you have a new board member that joins in March and the rest of the board already knows this, how do you bring that board member up in those specific things? I know we have onboarding, but this is a little bit more detailed.
Part of that's going to depend on the new board member, how they want to learn. If they just want to be immersed and ask questions as it goes. If they want to take time with the board chair or the superintendent and get an update. And then we also have people in the audience who don't necessarily know. So it's always, even when we're starting
true.
something that we might always know, you give a couple 3-minute overview of this is what we're going to talk about, this is why it's important, this is how it works into the system, and then lead it in. And if you're a new board member, you just hold on tight for the ride. And you hope in a couple of years it starts to make sense.
Yes, Brian.
So I think what you're saying is that one of the most important things that you're doing is every year you're looking back and you're making the judgment as to whether some things are working and some things are not, and the changes that need to be made. Okay.
Yeah, I would say, if you pick 2 things to focus on this year, then next year you pick another couple that might either build on those 2 things or are different that you feel like, okay, now we got that. But you're also going to re-examine those first 2 things. The way that we implemented them, did that really seem to work? Because we didn't know what we were doing, it was a best guess, and now we've had a little bit of experience. Look back at it, was that best guess actually based in logic, or we were just making a guess, and now we're like, oh, you know what, we should have done X instead of Y, let's try that. And we do that with some of our reports too, where like, can you bring us this information? And then we get that information in the next report, like, oh, we didn't think that was good. Could you maybe give us it in a different format or give us from a different angle? And so the next report is slightly different and it aligns with what the board is trying to understand better. And none of the information we get is bad or useless, but sometimes it could be, okay, we understand the foundation, let's move to the next level and give us something deeper.
Jason.
I'm wondering if you have taken on the evaluating your effectiveness of your communication and your outreach?
That is one of our problem
Yeah.
areas, as I think with every board. We are trying, we have our, community evaluation, or not, community engagement committee tries to do that, and it is actually one of our superintendent's goals for the last couple of years is to be trying to figure out better ways to engage with our community. And it's a hard nut to crack.
How are you measuring it?
Again, I'm not sure. I mean, I can tell you right now, Front Porch Forum is not a fun place in Virgins. Because we get a lot of stuff about the budget, and a lot of it is wrong. And, when I saw yesterday, I was like, I just want to have more, what do you want? He wanted more ability to engage. I've never seen your name before. We have had 50 meetings, either sub-meetings or full meetings, and we all have phone numbers and email addresses, and you can talk to the principals. There's many ways, and so just telling me you want, there's somebody else who said, I don't know why you expect me to show up to a board meeting or a Zoom call or read any of the links that you're sending out, but you need to keep me informed. I can come to your house and cook you dinner. So there are frustrating people, but there's also people who are genuinely trying to figure out what we're doing, and it's, I spent most of yesterday and today writing a Front Porch Forum post about what a school's surplus is, because it's confusing and people give you one or two sentences of, oh, give us the money back. I'm like, well, you voted to move the money there. We can't give it back because that's what the voters told us to do with the money. And it's not like we stole it, it's gone into capital reserve and it's already earmarked for certain things. But I broke my Front Porch Forum into two different things because it was like an 850 word, and it was still way up here. I gave some people like, well, you didn't talk about this, this, and this. Like, I know, it's already this long.
Right.
So I don't know how we're trying to measure it. We're just trying to figure out how to engage more people that want to be engaged. We've tried in-person dinners where we can have a roundtable on a certain subject. We've had students present. For the budget stuff we're talking about right now, we found that putting things out in social media in very small bites, a very specific small issue going out that's digestible in just a paragraph instead of trying to give
The whole
everything
book,
at once seems to be helping. But we haven't figured that out.
Chip, go ahead.
The priority thing I think is important, although having been on school boards a long time, a lot of the stuff we do is reactive, only because that's the way the world is, okay? So for us, you gave the, thing that will have 45 minutes, I know it wasn't that, on food service or something like that. Well, it would seem to me that our priorities should be more on results rather than on evaluating different sections along the way. So, because it may be working fine, okay, and if we don't get some information through some manner, we'll assume it's working okay. I don't mean perfect,
I would say that's a risky assumption.
it's a risky assumption, but it's also the fact that, if we meet 2 times a month, and we have other meetings of all the different committees, there's only so much time that you can devote to school board activity per se, okay? I know when the budget fails or if the budget is, in the process of being voted on. We have other times that we're having to do things, but at times I think we have to be realistic about how all that works. I just am a cynic on a little bit of that, because I just don't want to set goals that we can't ever achieve.
Well, the nice
relative
thing
to
here is that it's not set in the state regulatory system that these are the 7 goals you must achieve yearly. First of all, there's nobody that's gonna send you to school board jail if you don't follow any of this.
Yeah,
There's no teeth in this. But second, that's why we made it as open as possible. You guys figure out which goals you wanna do, what does it mean for your board education. And if you do it for a year or two and you're like, okay, we really don't need to be doing this,
I
you get
totally
to switch
agree,
it.
totally
But I
agree.
would say, to your point, yes, it's all reactionary, but it can't all be reactionary.
No,
So it's good to have that balance of, we as a board need to understand why we exist in the greater good and what's going on in our schools, and is what we are doing making any impact. If you're not looking at it from that and all you're doing is reacting on, we had this bill with the roof leaked, then you don't know what's happening with the kids. And so it needs to be the balance of the both. You need both.
I totally agree with you there. I'm just pointing out that there's so much work to happen, okay? That whether that comes from the superintendent, the board chair, whoever the person is that is leading that coordination, it has to be really, I mean, we've set up a pattern over a year of what the work of the board would entail in different ways. But this is, that's infinitesimal related to exactly what you're talking about.
Well, and keep in mind, this is 8 years in the making, and we're still figuring it out.
Yeah.
We haven't figured out communications yet.
Right.
And so when the board consolidated, we were a mess. And we had financial problems, and we were trying to get all the different pieces together. And slowly, it's been this process. And that's why I'm saying, don't take off more than you can handle at any given time, and always keep checking yourself. Is what we hope to happen actually happening? And do we really even need this? We thought we might need it. Turns out we don't. We already are very satisfied with how this was already working. Let's check this so that every 3 years we'll check in on this thing. We don't need to have it every year. But you give and take and figure out what's working for you and what's not, and move along. So that's why we try to keep this as fluid and open, because each board is going to be different. And in each, not even each district's board, but you're going to have some elections over the years, and the faces of these tables are going to differ, and they may have different things that they want to focus on. And that allows a different board in the future to decide, oh, they set it up this way, but we would really like to have it that way. So we're giving you as much rope as you need. Helpful or harmful as it may be.
Possibly, oh, you already turned the page. Like, here's a second, that's good. Actually, you did exactly what I wanted. Is there any questions on any of these that you see? Here's the protocols, and then we can then move to the process as well.
Barb,
Yep,
hello?
yes,
Can you hear me?
yes. Go ahead, Mary Heather.
Oh, okay, sorry. I had my hand up for a while. I wasn't
Oh,
sure
I'm
if you guys
sorry,
could hear.
we're projecting and didn't see it, sorry.
So I guess, well, first of all, Mark, thanks for coming to just answer questions about this. I
Sure.
appreciate your time and perspective. I guess one of the things I'm just wondering is, because this is kind of, these are sort of new rules, sort of codifying what boards should be doing anyway in terms of good governance. But I'm just wondering if there are expectations or sort of what the standards would be for boards to report out on their, work on these governance rules. Like, do we need to generate a report? Do we need to, include this in our annual report? So I'm just curious, like, is there, are there deliverables associated with these activities that we should be doing?
No. There might be in the future. I mean, AOE is sort of responsible for it, and AOE has been less than stellar in the last few years, and we may or may not have that change in the near future. And so a new Secretary of Ed may want to set up something where there's a reporting or a better understanding, but really this is more a self-governance type of issue where these are just best practices that are good to follow. If a board starts running into some problems and asks the SBA or somebody else to help out and get through the rough waters, they're gonna pull these out and say, okay, let's look and see where we are. And so it's just a nice checklist, a nice guidance of, this was a determination that to do these things gives you a better than not chance of being somewhat effective. And you can be more effective the more you buy into these different things and figure out what works for you. But at the same time, like I've been saying, it's very flexible and open. Each board gets to determine what that means for their particular situation. So it's hard to, I would have a hard time figuring out how you would even report out, because each board's gonna be a little different, and maybe you're not through all the pieces. It might take you a decade to get through all of them, so this is more just a guidance. But when they put F 127 together, it was a thought that school boards should have some guidance on how to be effective, and school boards should have some guidance on what they should be looking for in financial understanding and how to set up their facilities, checklists of what they're looking for and how to keep their buildings and properties in good order.
Right. When I was speaking with Debbie Singster, I think, she actually alluded to the fact that she was working on something with the AOE to be more of a board evaluation on the role.
And that's what I'm saying, if they might put something together,
Yeah.
AOE would then have to buy into it. And
Right.
I think that a lot of that kind of stuff that's smaller is on hold at AOE until they have a secretary in place and they know
Okay.
what direction they want to go. So it's possible they may have something, but they don't at this moment.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But VSBA will be trying to put together some sort of workshop where boards that want to get a deeper dive into how you might implement these things as opposed to me just rambling. I think they're going to try and put something together once this legislative session is over and they can all take a sigh of relief, because I think they've been in committee meetings almost nonstop for the last 6 weeks.
Is there things that were included in the rules that jump out that folks would like to explore questions on with Mark? So what I would like to do next is to actually, not in this particular meeting, but I was going to send out the survey, and I actually was going to just put it into a Google Forms format. So that, yeah, the eval, just as a next step for us to do some self-evaluation, which is part of the governance anyway, so that's a good thing to get familiar with that. In fact, last year I had met with Mark for a while, and he sent me some other evaluations that we could consider, for us as a board as well, some things that they've done. But this would be a good one to start on. And then at a subsequent board meeting, we could present, the results, and then start to narrow down. Here looks like convergence around these few items that we want to then pursue further, and then maybe we do need school board association, depending on what it is, to maybe come in and help us with that. But at least we're starting on that process, as opposed to let's just do it all. And we might be surprised, you know, when I go through the list, there are things that we are doing and will be doing, you know, with our new superintendent, you know, that kind of thing, so that'll be awesome.
How has Addison Northwest used the self-eval?
Well, I ran it as their test project.
Got it.
Their pilot group on when we put this together, I was like,
Got
okay,
it.
let's do it. And we did okay. I mean, there was nothing that anybody felt we were strongly disagreeing that we even do, but there were some that were in the neither agreeing or disagreeing, not really sure what this means. Some of them were strongly, yeah, we're right on that.
I guess I meant how are you using it as a tool?
Well, we took
Like-
that and then figured out where are we, what are we
Got
already
it.
doing, and then which ones do we want to focus on this year. And it's usually we have 2 retreats a year, and so we kind of dive into which pieces we want to focus on in sort of the summer retreat. And then our fall retreat is more geared on, okay, budget season's coming. What's going to be our focus? What are our goals? What are our priorities?
Excellent. Anything else? Well, thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate you driving down.
Well, it's not that far. And I think Suzanne just sent out the VSBA email, so my email is in there. If any of you have questions later, and if you get stuck on something, it is only a 15-minute drive, so I'm happy to come back.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mark.
Actually,
Have a
it's
good day.
probably closer than what my drive is. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, and when we put the agenda together, it did dawn on us that our student reps probably wouldn't be here today.
They're not on Zoom?
I don't think so.
They're smarter than I thought, yeah.
Let's check,
Why would you come?
let's check, just to make sure, you know? No, okay. So, hey, this is fine. So, next up is report of the superintendent.
Thank you. We have Courtney with us tonight to give us an overview of the upcoming NEASC process. NEASC stands for New England Association of Schools and Colleges. That organization also has an international arm, which is playing into the process that we're going to be doing as a first of its kind in the country. Courtney.
I think you'll hear some similarities between what we just heard about that board process of setting goals, reflecting on them. And one big difference is that I think I heard Mark say, currently the AOE then doesn't come and check on the progress you've set for yourself.
Guess what?
This involves us actively asking outside partners, professional partners, to come in and give us feedback on our goals and the progress we've made.
Sorry,
You're good. Am I blocking your vision too? So if there's one thing that I would want you to take away from tonight's presentation, it's the 2 bullets on the next slide. So I'm gonna wait for those.
That's right here. Courtney, if you want to.
Oh, thanks. Sorry, you weren't reading my mind. There you go. I'm gonna test this now. So there's a couple similarities between NEASC and the IB. They're both outside nonprofit accrediting organizations. And I'd say one of the biggest differences between the two is the NEASC standards have a bigger grain size, or more of a breadth to their standards. They encompass more of the whole learning community. Whereas the IB standards, although they have some overlap with all 5 of the NEASC standards, I see them really sitting in NEASC Standard 2, which is all about teaching and learning. So within that Standard 2, there's a lot of overlap, which is why the 2 organizations have come together and said, it makes sense for us to create a process for schools to go through a joint accreditation process instead of having to be on like different rotations and having 2 visiting teams. And so they've streamlined, and the biggest overlap, like I said, is in that standard 2. And I can give an example. NEASC standard, I think it's 2.2, says each school or district, we're looking at district accreditation, will have a documented curriculum that articulates units of study for each grade level, and each of those units will document what the essential questions, the content, the concepts, the skills, and the assessment for the unit are. And IB gives us a framework with much smaller grain size to help us make a roadmap to reach that standard. So even though within the IB framework, we, especially in the PYP and the MYP, we write our own units, we do have non-negotiables from the IB that give us, I think, enough structure so that then we can get creative within them, instead of sort of starting with this blank slate of, you need to have this coordinated curriculum across 9 schools, which is a pretty big task. So I would say that's the main difference between the two. NEASC has broader standards, and the IB is really about teaching and learning. This is a slide about what NEASC is as an accrediting institution. I think it's important to know it's voluntary. We ask, will you come and set goals with us within your standards? Help us hold ourselves accountable to these goals, and then come back and let us know how we're doing. In the process of making this slideshow, I went back currently, and I'm going to get into this, MUHS is our only NEASC accredited school, but I went back through the past 3 evaluation visits to look at where we were during each of those times, and it was fascinating to look at what the goals were, even in 2012, what the faculty said in a school-wide survey. So all of that information remains, and it's something for you to use as ongoing conversations with yourself, really.
Jamie?
Yes.
Hi. I just have a question, like what kinds of goals? Like would they, like we have a strategic plan,
Yeah.
a lot of goals in there,
Yeah.
right? So like what are we talking about? What area?
So the last slide of this presentation talks about the strategic plan,
Okay,
but within each of the standards, so the NEASC standards, I did have to write them down because I didn't memorize them, are learning culture, student learning, professional practices, learning support, and learning resources. And the way I would read that is sort of culture is all about policies. What are the policies of your schools and your district? Student learning, like I said, is all about teaching and learning. Professional practices is a lot about ethical practices, keeping up with professional development. I think the IB framework touches into that standard too. Learning support is very much about student services, and I think actually the NEASC goes a little bit deeper into what they would expect than the IB does in terms of student services and student support. And then the 5th standard is learning resources, which is all about the safety and the functionality of your schools and the facilities and the buildings. So whereas IB might say, you need to have a chemistry lab if you're offering chemistry, they don't ask about, say, like your food storage. So
okay,
sort of does
Okay.
that a little bit answer your
Yep.
question? I'm going to get more into the strategic plan at the very end.
sure, thank you.
Why accreditation? I think I sort of covered that, but it is a professional partnership with an outside organization, so someone coming in and saying, yeah, we, who are also accrediting thousands of public and private and independent schools in the country and around the world, are giving you the same sort of stamp of approval that we're giving these other schools. They give objective feedback. They're really responsive to the different cultures of schools. They don't expect every school to be the same living organism as each other, and they ask schools to take their own cultures into account when they're setting their goals. It engages the whole community, including you all. When we enter this year-long self-study process, you'll all be engaged in these conversations about goal setting and progress. And then they do offer specific accommodations and recommendations to drive improvement. IB does the same, so this would be, well, I'm spoiling the next slides, but it would be one team, one visit, one report is what that will look like. This might help ground us a little bit in where we've been with NEASC. So in 1955, MUHS became NEASC accredited. 2012 was our most recent visit. It's usually a 10-year visit, and at that time, we had just found out that NEASC and IB were looking into this partnership to offer joint accreditation, and they allowed us to extend our visit in order to engage in this. We are going to be the first U.S. public school district to engage in the joint full district accreditation. So while other schools are going through the joint NEASC IB accreditation at the school level, we'll be the first public school district in the country to do that. So there's been a 2-year period of working with teams from both organizations, working with the board at NEASC, and I have to say they've been really responsive and really engaging, and I think there's something in this for all of us, so it's felt more like a partnership as opposed to our just jumping through someone else's hoops. In 2016, we merged into the ACSD. In 2020, all 9 schools became IB World Schools, and then this process of becoming a joint accredited district began last school year. So it is a process that I've inherited in this role, but which I was invited to engage in last spring after I took this job. So I was involved at the end of last school year in it. So in June 2023, that's the 2-day training that I came and attended with many of our school principals and the curriculum coordinators, representatives from IB and from the NEASC came and worked with us to give us a little bit of a taste of what the collaborative learning protocol would be like. That is the name of the year-long self-study. So they took us through a mock version of what we would experience before totally engaging in this. And then here we are in May, and all of our 8 schools who aren't already accredited have been working all year. First in the fall, they submitted applications to become NEASC accredited. And then this spring, they submitted foundational reports, which is really a report about do you have the foundational things in place you need to have in place to run a school in order to then become accredited and start engaging in this reflective process. Those have been submitted. This whole school year, our principals really and our curriculum coordinators have been working on those reports. And then the next step is in October 24. Then, well, before that, the foundational team is going to come in May in just a couple of weeks, and they're going to visit each school with this joint report that all of the principals filled out together. They did a self-reflection on all the standards. And it was an interesting process because they had to sort of agree on the ratings they gave, which is hard to do across 8 schools. I think the ratings were like E, this is highly evident, D, we're still developing, and then N, sort of needs attention. And we were largely, I think, in the D category, A, because I think we're pretty harsh critics of ourselves, and then B, whenever we couldn't come to full consensus, we kind of ended up there. So then each school gave an additional addendum report where they got to reflect on their own thoughts about each standard. So the team will come, it'll have a representative from the sort of the NEASC administration on it. In a couple of weeks, it'll have all NEASC teams are made up of other teachers and administrators from around usually New England or the US who volunteer to go on these committees. I've served on them before. I think Wendy mentioned she's served on many of them. I don't think they have them in PA, NEASC visiting, but probably something similar. And they're really interesting. You go to other schools and help give feedback to the school about their goals. Then in October, that's when the joint team will come and do a kickoff with our whole, really, learning community. Looking over the standards and beginning conversations about what is it that we mean to be doing in our classrooms, how do we know what we're doing, what we mean to be doing, and what's the evidence that we're doing that. And that'll be a year-long process, and then in October 25, after we've reflected on where we're at, and this is kind of where the strategic plan comes in, I think, then this peer evaluation visit happens, where they come and give us our accommodations and recommendations. I think through this timeline, I just took you through all the rest of the slides by accident. I'll just go quickly. Why now? This is a pretty new option, like I said, this district-wide accreditation. Why does it make sense? It makes sense if we're a school district who's trying to articulate goals for ourselves, PK-12, and have alignment, promotes cohesiveness. MUHS, like I said, is due for reaccreditation with NEASC, and all 9 of our schools are up for their 5-year IB reevaluation. So those are aligning pretty nicely. And then once all of our schools are accredited, we'll be eligible to always engage in this one visit. The collaborative learning protocol is what we'll begin engaging in the fall with our teachers. I pretty much said all of this. Really, it's somewhat for efficiency's sake, and also to have the power of these 2 accrediting organizations. One is truly strictly an accrediting organization. The other is much more, I think, about a partner who's in the teaching and learning with us, helping us stay up to date with best practices, classroom practices. I don't think there's anything here I haven't said, except for it's not just a 1-year event. It starts conversations that we hope continue for 5 years until the next time this happens. Similar to what Mark was saying, I think, about setting school board goals. We're going to set these goals in relation to our strategic plans, start these conversations, and if we're doing it well, they'll continue. I just said all of that. This bullet right here about finding evidence, when we went through the mock workshop, there was a huge emphasis on finding evidence of impact. So they don't want to see agendas that we've talked about things that we say we want to be doing. They want us searching our classrooms for evidence that we're doing what we say we need to be doing. And if we're not, that's on us to kind of talk about and reevaluate why. But NEASC made it really clear when they were here that they've really shifted the focus of their visits. And I think if you ask someone who's been through a NEASC visit before, they might say, oh my goodness, that's so much work. There's so many hoops to jump through. It's like a huge paper trail. And they've really responded to that feedback and said, we don't want all that paperwork. We want the evidence, whether it's photos or videos, or some kind of real-time, first-hand evidence that what you want to be happening in your classrooms is happening in your classrooms. And here comes the strategic plan. Ooh. This is my last one. I think that the strategic plan helps us narrow down, especially goal 3. I think that's where I realistically see this work, mostly aligning. You've already articulated for us where you want us to focus, because there's a lot of goals and a lot of standards. More Common Core state standards than there are days in the school year, I like to say. Probably I've said that in this room before. So you've narrowed down some goals for us around literacy and math, and I think those are going to be forefront as we begin having these conversations with our staff. We've already started outlining our PD for next year with a huge emphasis on literacy and math. We heard those are sort of our guardrails, and then we're going in with that lens as is appropriate at the different grade levels.
So next in the process, and one of the motivations for asking Courtney to come here, is when the team is here in early May, there's a section where the board needs to participate, and after meeting, they've decided it's the executive committee. So our executive committee is going to be meeting with them on the 9th of May from 4:15 to 5. And there's specific questions here that are really focused on the governing body. And, for example, the governing body promotes strong ethical values and compliance through appropriate and effective oversight. And we'll have an opportunity to give a rating. What's happened up to now is the principals have assessed where we are. So they gave us a developing, which is fine. But there are some things that they're not visible to, right? For example, here, evaluating the superintendent is included here, as is our governance. And they don't, see the methodology that we have for that. And so we'll have an opportunity to also respond, based on our perspective as well.
To be fair to the principals, they didn't want to rate on, I think it's foundational standard 2. They
Yeah.
were like, I think this is for the board. And so we asked NEASC, and they were like, no, we'd like to know, like, what is their perception of
Which is important.
head of school, that would be Tim, and his relationship with the board. And so like I said, a lot of that D comes from either not being sure, differing opinions, and then wanting to land in some kind of a middle place. That was a hard one.
Right. And would it make sense, like for this foundational goal 2, is to really share with the board ahead of time the kinds of things that would people be interested in seeing, the questions that'll be asked. We won't have a board meeting between then and now. I've, gone through these, and a lot of them is really showing the evidence for what we do, right? There obviously will most undoubtedly be things that we find that we don't maybe need improvement, whatever. But I'd be happy to work to give you those sheets. I guess there's technically, I have a draft of, what everybody pulled together. I mean, is there, at this stage, is it premature for the board to see something like that as well? Or?
No, I think it's your prerogative to share with your board. And the other thing to know is that each standard that has a rating, we then had to supply evidence of that existing. So we have a folder for each standard full of evidence that we've mostly culled from your board website or from our curriculum documents or from student services to put in the folder of evidence.
Right. So we should actually make sure we look at the folder so we're not reinventing, because if they've done all the hard work for showing the evidence, I don't want to do it again. Yeah.
Maybe I could email you the link to those folders.
That would be awesome.
Yep.
That would be awesome.
Okay.
So if folks are interested, I will get this whole report, because it's definitely interesting reading, so that I can share that, with the entire board. I'd be happy to do that. Joanna?
You sort of answered this question, but I had in my head one of the first NEASC goals was culture, and then you said it's related to policy.
Yeah.
So it made me wonder, what is the board's interaction with this work, not necessarily now, but after the fact, after they come, is there?
It's a good question. So after this foundational standards visit, where it's sort of like getting everyone up to accreditation standard or status, I think that the board's participation is ongoing indirectly and directly. So for example, when you set out a strategic plan with goals, that's going to directly drive our work all the way down to the classroom level on what we're doing. But also directly related, and I think that every NEASC IB reevaluation visit from now on will involve board participation. Typically my experience has been, when they come, they have a series of meetings. They want to meet with parents, they want to meet with the governing body, with teachers, with staff, so probably in that capacity.
Steve?
So I think you've implied this answer, but I was hoping for a little bit more of an explicit connection. NEASC seems to endorse IB as a good system to help meet their goals. And we've been doing NEASC for a very long time. And it seems like this is yet another way that IB meets another set of standards that we are trying to do. So, when people say, all this money wasted on IB, here is yet another way
that we are kind of out in front of the curve by using IB to meet NEASC standards. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, and I would also say, I mean, I know every penny counts, but when you look at the cost of our IB programs in relation to what it would cost to go and buy those things independently, that's another conversation, but that's one part of that discussion. And then the other part is, yeah, that's one way of looking at it, and also I did have to, when I first came on board into this position, do some digging about, I had some real curiosities, like, well, why are we gonna have IB, and why are we gonna have NEASC, and what is the difference? And I get that these align, but how many things do we wanna layer? So I did a lot of looking into that to find out what the two different things do offer. And I think in some ways they overlap and serve each other, and in other ways they serve different purposes.
Jason?
So the NEASC cycle is a 10-year cycle and the IB cycle is a 5-year cycle? Is it all going to 5 years now? Is
That's
that...
a great question. I don't know the answer to that. That's my hope. I personally think 10 years is a long time to wait to kind of get everything out of the closet, and that's what NEASC used to feel like a little, like getting everything out and re-looking. But I can find out. I don't know.
Well, the 5-year cycle would sync better with our strategic planning cycle too. right?
Absolutely.
Totally.
So that
Right.
makes more sense.
Yep.
And the hope is that the process can be expedited in the future, right? Like going through this now sets us up to be able to take advantage of a more streamlined reevaluation.
Forever going forward.
Yes.
So everything we've done this year, we would never do again. It's this getting the other 8 schools
Credit.
up to baseline accreditation. And then after that, it would always be only engaging in the reflection cycle really about the learning and not, well, NEASC standards, like I said, are about more than the learning, but it would forevermore just be this one joint process.
I want to be sensitive to this idea of adding that extra burden on administrators. I mean, that seems like a lot that they participated in.
They
so,
did,
yeah.
definitely. Yep, I think they all are deserved a thank you.
Yeah.
for their
Yes.
work.
Yeah, it was behind the scenes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Excellent. Well, thank you so much for...
Thank you, Courtney.
Sure.
There's a question.
Oh, go ahead.
That's all right. I have 3 questions about the next item that's coming up. So should I put those forward now or after?
I think
An
after a motion
appointment?
is made.
Yeah, after a motion is made on the appointments?
Okay.
And, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, the item 2 under the superintendent's report is a list of resignations and appointments, and I ask that the board approve those.
Can I have a motion?
I'll move to accept the following appointments: Jennifer Billings, Michael Ludak, Tom Hagan, Stephen Hill, Josie Jordan, or Jose Jordan, Rob McEwen, Christopher Perkins, Julie Pettis, Heather Robb, Lauren Simmons, and the resignations of Julian Hyatt, Andy Malley, Heather Robb, Laura Nugent, Pamela Solent, Darcy Weisenbeck, thank you, and a retirement of Cindy Atkins.
Okay, and a second was Jamie? Okay, now questions.
All right, just three quick questions. In this, what does the term appoint mean?
Hire.
So is it a new hire?
Most of these are vacancies. The only new hire, it would be Mr. Dudek.
Okay. And then is there, for the district, is there a standard background check for new hires?
They all have to go through a standard background check.
And then lastly, I think you've mentioned his name, what does it mean, administrator on assignment? He can go from school to school?
He goes where we tell him to go, and he's assigned at Mary Hogan.
Okay, thank you.
He would be, I should say. He is now and would be assigned to Mary Hogan going forward. But that could change down the road if things change or develop or improve. But we can move him, and he could be a pinch hitter where we may need him different places.
Well, that's
for
what I'm thinking, that's the purpose of it, so you have somebody in reserve or whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it in reserve because he has a lot to do.
Okay.
But if some needs are greater elsewhere, we have the flexibility to put him wherever the greater need might be. I don't anticipate that being the case, but we would have the option to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, Jamie next, and then Chip.
I have a question about Lauren Simon, the non-union position. Just curious why that position is listed as non-union.
As a custodian.
Oh,
She's
Ruth
an
Hedges is
administrator.
the special ed director, so
She's a
that's
director, though.
administration.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just curious, I just, that seems like a, what would you call it, off-step or a non-step appointment? And I'm just,
Red circle.
Yeah, that might be a
Yeah.
typo on our part because we don't have any non-union custodians.
That was our question.
Yeah. Yeah,
And we said we weren't gonna do that anymore.
well, we can't.
Right. So that, hence the question.
If you want to remove that till we get better clarification, that's fine.
I would rather do that than vote on it because it really is a big question.
Yeah. Yeah,
And-
I'm sorry about that.
I have,
Yes, Steve.
and then I have a question. The appointment of Mr. Dudek, was that position posted? Was it competitively interviewed, or was he just?
It was not posted.
Okay.
It's just reassigned.
Could I ask why?
Why?
Yes.
Well, one of the reasons is because Mary Hogan staff believe that that would be helpful. We've seen evidence that it's helpful, and we feel that that's an important thing to do for the situation at Mary Hogan.
Thank you.
Okay, Joanna.
I asked about exit interviews last, and I don't need that information, but just wanted to confirm that information was being gathered with the,
Yes, I've directed the HR director to, coordinator to
Okay.
do exit interviews when people leave.
okay.
Sometimes they don't want to.
And you can't force them.
No,
but-
no. And sometimes they really want to.
Yeah. And then could there potentially be a plan in an executive session to hear that information gathered, or?
I suppose, is that the role of the board? I guess it's a question I would have.
It's happened before, so,
That has been practice?
I don't know if it's been practiced, but it has been.
We've had
we have,
We
global
have heard.
comments. but-
Global, but not individual.
Yeah, no, not like individual, but an overarching,
Oh.
are there themes?
And I'm
are
not
there
necessarily
patterns?
opposed to individual comments either,
Yeah.
you hearing them. But I just want to know if that's been practiced, if that's appropriate. I mean, I'm happy to share whatever in executive session about
Well,
personnel.
just food for thought.
Steve?
Would it be possible in that case to like maybe once a year, like on our calendar, hear the report of the administration about the result of exit interviews?
The
Yeah.
highlights, maybe.
Yeah.
The time of year for that probably would be best, because we're getting resignations now, because this is the hiring season and the leaving season. So I would say summertime would be the time for that kind of a thing to happen. So
Okay,
then the
go ahead.
motion on the floor and seconded was to have H as part of it. And the motion would have to be amended to remove
J.
H.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Oh, I
No, I
will
mean-
make my motion
J,
to
isn't it?
remove
J.
J.
J, Lauren Simon.
One second.
Okay. So it's been amended.
We haven't voted on the amendment yet.
Great. So there's a motion to amend the original motion to remove item J, the appointment of the custodian. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Me.
Okay, great. And so now we can go back to the original motion, which I'm not going to read through what Suzanne did. She did so well. But just to indicate that it'll be all items, individuals, except for J. Is that okay? Okay. So all those in favor of approving the list as amended, but to remove item individual on line J, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, 2 abstentions.
Clarification.
Yes.
I presume then, at the next reasonable time,
We'll have-
Jay will show up without the
In the next-
non-union.
yeah.
Because I see it's effective 4/23, so.
Yeah.
Mary Heather's hands up.
Oh, Mary Heather? Yes.
Yeah, just, can you guys clarify who abstained, please? I can't
I
see.
got them for you, Mary Heather.
Yeah. It was
Oh,
Laura,
thank you,
Laura and Steve, but
thank you,
Suzanne's got you covered too.
thanks.
Okay, so that's approved.
Thank you. And the last item under superintendent's report, we have a non-renewal of Lynn Suddaby. I'm asking the board to affirm the non-renewal of teacher Lynn Suddaby, her contract.
Who was it again?
Lynn Suddaby.
So moved.
Okay, a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All those in,
Could I?
yes,
I,
please say.
There was some question about whether that person wanted to speak to the board, and
They had to petition, as per the master agreement, they had to petition to the board clerk
Yep.
to have that done. That never happened.
not done. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none. All those in favor of the non-renewal of the contract for, and Suzanne, could you say the name?
Lynn Sudley?
Thank you. Please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have Brian
And Laura.
and Laura. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Excellent, thank you so much. Moving right along. Under report of the chair, I would like to just briefly run through a couple items. First of which is a retreat update. And I did spend a couple hours with Dr. Baker last week, starting to frame out the retreat. A large portion of the retreat is going to be spent around the strategic plan implementation. We'll have a presentation. There'll be discussion around recommended goal actions and how best to achieve them, including, strategic plan gaps. And the other thing that will come up and that we need to look at is things like equity-based budgeting and policy development is part of our role as well, right? With that, what I want to be able to do with the retreat is have a portion of it be education. And what we're looking for is someone that could come in and give us a presentation on equity-based budgeting and/or policy development to kind of help ground us, since that's something that was important and brought out in the strategic plan. So I'll be working with Matt to, for the budget development one is kind of my first priority for that, because you can't start thinking too soon about the budget, especially this year. So that, we can kind of get a sense for what that is going to entail and start to kind of change the lens that we look at the budget through. So that work is underway. One of the things, just dealing with logistics, lunch will be provided. As you remember, it's going to be June 1st. Haven't secured a location yet. However, over the weekend, I saw that the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, they actually offer their facilities for free.
St. Stephen?
St. Stephen's, sorry. Offer it for free. And so then we could, spend the money on more of the food as opposed to, say, the location. If folks were open to, meeting there, it's kind of nice. It's in the green, right, in Middlebury. We've reached out to a few places that aren't available. On the list that Darcy's helping me with is really also the UU Church. Even thought of the Kurt Alumni Hall, right? My guess is that might be a little too, it's all about how much it's going to cost.
Yeah, and Kirk, you can't bring in food, you have to use their food service.
You have to use their food services, that kind of thing. And I recently saw that the Crooked Ladle actually has a room down below that they offer catering as well. And so I reached out to them and also, what kind of food services they could provide, even if it was, say, at the church, right? So I'm hoping over the next, week or two that we can get this all ironed out. So if you have ideas of where might be a good location, please let me know, and I'll add it to the list.
What was the timing you were
It's
thinking?
June 1st.
No, I know that, but I meant the.
Oh, the timing? At this point, I believe it'll be about 9:30 start and go probably 2:30, 3, during the day. I'll be able to give you further updates on this as we really lay out the time, right? To make it worthwhile and make sure that we're not like rushing through it as well. Steve?
So last year we had the retreat here. Is there a reason we wouldn't have it here again?
I mean,
this is free.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's just, the thought was, and working with Darcy is like, you guys are in that room all the time. We can do that. We can do that. The first retreat I did with the board, we actually did it at the gym. At the cafeteria at Mom's. So that's possible as well. Let me know your thoughts. I'm happy, just to do it here, like we've done the other things. Or if it was like a free location, at like the church on the green, would that be a nice change of pace? Or you'd rather we just do it here? That's fine with me too. Ellie?
Does the space need to have breakout rooms, or are we just looking for one room for the board?
I think enough room to break out if we need to work in groups, right? And we've done that. We've managed to do that in this space as well, right? It's just, we're going to be there for a longer period of time, and, really what's comfortable for you guys. I don't have a vested interest anyway. So if you want to tell me, no, let's just cut to chase and do it here, we can definitely do that. Any thoughts on that? Mary Heather?
Thanks. Yeah, I think, I guess I kind of agree that just using an ACSD facility, even if it's at a school or the MUH library or something instead of this particular room makes sense. I can tell you just from experience seeking space, event space, the Crooked Ladle, even the basement space, they charge a pretty penny for it.
Okay,
so,
good to know, good to know.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's gonna be our best bet.
Okay, good to know, because I haven't talked, it's obviously all comes down to what the cost is. Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to prioritize no cost on location.
Okay, that's really good to hear. I can definitely direct Darcy in that way. Okay, any questions? Yes?
If we're talking about bringing someone in to talk about helping us get better at having equity-informed decision-making, it seems to me that maybe you might want to engage someone for more than just 3 hours. And it might be a longer-term engagement with someone to help us, help the administration, actually get good at this and build capability in that area.
You mean
would be a good investment.
Not just for the,
meeting.
yeah, not just the
exactly.
retreat, yeah, that's a good, that's
So
good
I don't know if
feedback,
we want to
right.
make this just like a little intro, try somebody out for a few
Right.
hours and see if we like them, but I think like thinking about this over the next 6, 9, 12 months is probably,
A good thing,
Yeah.
no, that's great. Thank you for that. Anything else? So, and when I was talking with Matt a couple weeks ago, when we were talking about retreat, he did suggest, well, why don't you just have everybody come out to the farm and weed for you, And as appealing as that sounded, I thought, well, probably not. So, what are you gonna? Yeah, what are we gonna do? Okay, thank you for that. So, for the direction. So the next thing I just wanted to talk about briefly was kind of legislative efforts involvement. And this does tie to the board governance and AOE review, rules, where the board stays appraised of proposed legislation and policy making that may affect its school board, its school systems and students, and maintaining ongoing relationships with locally elected officials. So the only reason I kind of bring that up is at this point in time, there is just so much happening on the legislative front that I thought it was good to kind of highlight this as part of our role, right, as a body. And in doing that, I know that the Vermont School Board Association, they're really asking us to respond and send in our feedback to legislators and to, say, Ed Committee. Like, for example, right now, the hearing is happening tomorrow for the person that our governor has hired for the Secretary of Education, right? And so, as a board, how do we want to be engaged in something like that in the future, right? And what kind of a process would we use? Like, we can individually, respond, right? But I, as a chair, obviously can't unless I have input from the board to do so. And so I think there's times when it might be more powerful that we as a body, right, are making a statement. And I wanted us to start to think about how we could do that in the future. So that just as, yeah, I saw you, Brian. So that if something came up that we did want to make that statement, that we don't have to necessarily wait for a board meeting, right? Because we usually don't have that amount of time. And so if folks have ideas on how we could do that, that would be really welcome. Because it's just like this year, it seems like so important, and it does make a difference. It has made a difference. We actually watched it make a difference over the last couple weeks, right? And we've been pretty silent. And, I know that Dr. Baker, she does want to engage with our legislators. In fact, we had meetings this morning with 3 of our reps, right, which was great. And it was more not like advocating and telling them, well, you got to do whatever, but it's how can we work together and how can we be a resource, for them so that we are involved in the formation of ideas as opposed to maybe reacting to those ideas, which I think would be a wonderful place to be. But there are times I think we may want to react to ideas as well. So I'm going to shut up, and if somebody has some thoughts, and Brian, and then Steve.
Yes,
Steve.
I would suggest sending Angela Lynn's editorial to the people in the Department of Education. I don't know whether you all read it, but it was excellent.
I did read that. Steve?
Anytime we take board action that's not happening in a session, we risk violating
Yes, we
meeting
do.
laws. So we have to be careful about how we respond. You're right, we don't get enough notice on these things.
Right.
To be able to do that. But These guys are really important, not just because they control the purse strings, but they have a lot of inside information. What we found out today was scary. The two shots from two different legislators that are friendly to us across our bow financially, that does not bode well. And I don't know if you had a chance to parse through that thing that Robin gave us. They're getting rid of the double tax. So double tax was put on hold until 2029. That's going away. It's in effect next year. And we are one of the districts that bumps right up against that all the time. So we've got financial, they didn't, well, Peter did kind of warn us that we are one of the highest spending districts in the state. And so it's nice to have that information from them because although we don't have specifics and things can happen, but that conduit is important for both us to advocate for them and for them to inform us as to what's coming down the line, because all three of them absolutely have deep connections to this district and understand the legislation that's coming forward and its impact here locally. So I wholly support trying to stay in contact with them on a regular basis. And I think all three of them were very receptive, and I think Amy Sheldon and Chris Bray would also. They just couldn't make it today.
Right.
But I think all five of them, and Jubilee Monroe.
And Jubilee as well.
Yeah, all those are great resources of information, especially on money, which comes almost exclusively from the state, so.
Any other thoughts? And I would be, and maybe is, really setting up, a method or kind of a timeline, of how to engage frequently with them, which is doable, because we could do that through our governance, roles and responsibilities, and it doesn't violate any kind of open meeting law, which we can't do. From responding to things like the Secretary of State, obviously we can do it on an individual basis. I guess I asked folks to think about, in the future, maybe what would be a way to do it, and, how could we come up with a process, that doesn't break open meeting law, obviously, to be able to react on some of the important issues that are coming down our, I think we're seeing the tip of the iceberg, to tell you the truth, as far as things that are going to be happening down the road. So, and Jamie?
Yeah, thanks so much for putting this on the agenda, really. And I'm sorry I missed the meetings today. I was teaching, but I'm curious now from Steve's kind of cryptic assessment of it that I'd like to hear more. So there was some talk about like a committee, that like a legislative committee or something that sort of had. Do you remember this discussion? Yeah. And I'm curious if such a committee was composed of fewer people, if it needed to, could warn a meeting, meet quicker via fewer schedules, and be able to sort of at least collect and analyze the political legal stuff that's coming out, and perhaps respond quicker. And I wonder if that is a vehicle to address some of the thing you're talking about.
Yeah, and what Jamie brought up, I happened to meet with him the other day because there's something flying around me, which is distracting.
Yeah, it was just over here too.
As chair of the policy committee, and so we met, and what I shared with him, a discussion I had with Dr. Baker, where she had thrown out kind of a brainstorm idea that at some point maybe what we do, because she recognizes how important this is as well, is that if the chairs of committees form up, say, a legislative committee, right? So you're not necessarily forming yet another committee, and you kind of have the chairs and they could bring it back to their committees if they needed to. It was just an idea she had come up with that I shared with him. So I'm, definitely looking for creative ideas here and what folks would like to do. And we could do something like that, or, we could form. And then as a board, do we decide to, under certain pretense and parameters, to allow that committee to form a communication, right, for us? And what kind of approval? Do we kind of like sanction and trust this group to do that for us, or, whatever? Those are all things I think we'd have to think through, right? But, doing the research would be a really good thing,
Yeah.
because it's been like a fire hose, I've just usually pride myself at being able to keep up with this stuff, and I'm just having a really hard time. There's just so much stuff that you really should be listening to and hearing and that kind of thing, and then trying to catch up on. And Mary Heather.
Yeah, thanks. I think, when we talked about this at the executive committee level, Dr. Baker's suggestion about, having a committee to do this was discussed, and I think, one of the things that I kind of worry about is adding a committee, another committee.
Oh, absolutely.
And the sort of time and effort of warning that committee and it just seems to me like an unnecessary redundant layer when you have a board chair and a superintendent whose roles, just as leaders in the district and in the board, automatically include keeping an eye on this sort of thing. So it seems to me kind of the path of least resistance is to rely on the leadership that we already have, and kind of when the need arises for the rest of the board to stand up and come together with either a statement or some collective voice on a really important matter. I think that can just come from you two. I think that adding another committee, that it just, I think, would make it harder for us to swiftly respond when necessary. And I guess I feel like we already have the capability of responding with you and Dr. Williams and Dr. Baker in the future. So I guess to me, it seems like this is the opportunity to just notify the full board, like, hey, our individual responsibilities as board members is to keep an eye on this stuff and pay attention to it, and not just sit on our haunches and just let Barb keep an eye on it, but know that this is happening and going on, and then, if either of them say, this is really important, we best respond as a unified voice, that we do so and we support that effort. So that was my perspective when we discussed this at the executive committee level. I'm just wary of adding another committee that it's hard to schedule.
I know.
It creates more work for Darcy. The warning has time. There's minutes that then need to be, I'm wary of that.
And how do folks feel about that? Chip?
Yeah,
And then Brian?
I'd agree with Mary Heather. I think the simpler way, part of the reason there's a school board association is so they can respond to that, hopefully in a group effort, to try to direct legislative type actions. But just the way it's happening, I don't keep track of it completely because it's overwhelming.
It is.
A little
it
bit,
is.
and certainly I'm not spending my day every day listening to hearings in Montpelier. But at times I do respond to the school board association's request or something that way, which, if it makes sense to me, I will make effort as an individual to do that. But this is like a fire hose, and I think that, not that it's unusual, but I think it's extra unusual at this point because of all the bad stuff that happened and the backtracking and the changing and now the backtracking again. It's just, well, I don't know how
Yeah.
individual boards actually can even have any impact on that. I know it might be important, but I don't know how they could, just in the time frame. So, 2 people, superintendent and chair, to me makes much
And-
more sense. And if the chair wants information from the board, then that chair has to figure out how to get it in a timely manner.
Right. And so my question back is, kind of how does that process work? Because I'm, like I can respond as an individual right now, but I don't feel comfortable unless you tell me I can respond on behalf of the board. So we would need a process, I think, around how that would work so that I make sure that I'm authorized to respond. Right? Because, and the problem is like the timing of this stuff, all this is kind of like hurry up and whatever. So I'm not sure how much we can do. But just something for us to think about, I think.
Point.
Yeah, Brian.
I think it's most important to hear both sides of this conversation before any decision is made. We have heard one board member indicate some of the negatives that we have not heard the new superintendent as to why she brought it up and why she wants to have it and what benefits it might be. So I see that this is an incomplete situation. It is not completely heard.
What is it? I'm sorry, I'm not sure I followed.
Basically, the new superintendent indicated that she'd like to have members of the committees getting together and form a committee that would basically create a voice maybe to the legislature or through you to the legislature.
No, okay, yeah, and it's basically creating a legislative committees whose purpose would be to keep track of what's happening. And that was just nothing that she said that was required. Yeah, go ahead.
And she didn't come to the executive committee with that suggestion.
No.
She suggested that as she was drawn into the conversation.
Okay,
Right.
that's what I needed to know.
Yeah, thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, no, in no ways is she saying that we need to do, I mean, she'll throw ideas out, right? Only because of the situation we're currently in.
Well, she should.
Yeah, and she should. You might consider doing this. And so, some of those ideas I'm gonna bring back and say, well, and that's what I did tonight, right? So that folks could weigh in. Steve?
Might it not be interesting to see if there's any appetite on the board to form one of those committees who would be interested in serving on it? And if there are people that are willing to do that, yes, I understand, another committee, all the things that go into that, but if there's people that are willing to do it, why would we not?
I mean, there's no harm in, right, there's no harm, and so if folks are interested in doing that, send me an email, right? And then we can talk about it. Obviously, I understand completely, there's a lot of work to do, right? And there's no judgment if folks say, oh, I can't do this, right? And I'm happy to, fill this role as best I can. But at the same token, I'm one person, and and it's going to have some of my bias, as I'm listening to things. So having more than one person kind of involved in that's not a bad thing too. But feel free, to send me an email with your thoughts on this. It's nothing we have to decide here tonight. I just wanted to kind of like bring it up in light of everything that's going on. And also just like thinking about how can we respond if there is a time that we want to do a collective response. Not that we have to do this all the time. And most of the time, just doing what the School Board Association, like, Chip has indicated, it's just fine. It's just fine. But there may be a time that there needs to be more, as this new commission is getting, started and they start to make decisions around that is kind of what I'm looking to. And I think more importantly is, really getting at the front end and partnering and meeting with legislators more so that we're on the front end of it as things are developing, and being asked our opinion would be an awesome thing, right? It's better to be proactive than reactive. Yes, Mary Heather.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to also just revisit and check just the mechanism for committee formation in general, and just make sure that the process, is consistent with our policies and
Sure.
Sure. That committees are obviously formed by the full board.
Yes.
And the majority of the board, and given a clear charge, so just make sure that process is followed.
Well, if there's folks interested, then we can bring it back to a board meeting and then let the committee decide, or the board decide if in fact we want to form this. But if no one has the cycles to do it, it's a moot point, right? Understandably. Okay? Thank you. Good discussion. So moving right along, report of the board. So at this point, we've listed all of the various positions, board committees, as well as positions that folks serve on. So we can kind of quickly go through the list. We're actually doing okay on time. And if you have something to report out, great. If you don't, it's perfectly okay to basically say it passed for this particular go-around. The second meeting of the month, we'll normally see the whole list, so folks have a chance to report out for their committee. So we'll start with communications and engagement. So Tricia, and congratulations on being the elected chair.
So I was elected chair of
Yes.
the Communications and Engagement Committee meeting, and our schedule will now be on the third Tuesday of the month, with the exception of this coming April 30th, where Emily will be talking to us about opportunities to show appreciation for teachers, which will be happening in early May, so you will likely be getting some forwarded communication from us at that point. We also had the beginnings of a conversation on how we can better improve communication and engagement with the public, whether in these full board meetings or beyond, and that will be an ongoing issue that we are addressing throughout our time together.
Thank you. Negotiations, Steve.
In case you have not heard, I am pleased to report that we have tentative agreements with both the teachers and I can't say with the support staff because we still have some details to work out there, but we're very close with them, and I think we will be able to successfully conclude negotiations with them without going to arbitration, and that's huge. I can't tell you all the specifics because that would take a long time, but the basic agreement with the teachers is 654, 6% for the next year.
Do we want to say that out in public because they haven't ratified?
They have not ratified, but we have like I said, we're not going to release the details, and I asked Chris Leopold.
Okay.
He said you can give the general outlines, 654, and I know that's important to the finance committee. And it's a 3-year deal, and the ESP, education support personnel, is a 2-year deal. And theirs is 10 plus 2, and I can explain what the 2 plus 2 is if you want, and 6. So we didn't come in under 6%, but we got pretty close. And considering the starting positions, I think we got a pretty good deal out of this. And there's other things, that are more important for the second year. You'll hear more. Teachers are going to vote to ratify May 9th, and so the first board meeting we may be able to ask for board acceptance if the teachers ratify on the 9th. ESPs, again, they can't even vote until we get this other thing resolved. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really want to take this opportunity to thank the negotiations committee. It's been quite the
We actually sat together today.
Yeah, I know. That's pretty good. It's been a really hard, you're so used to sitting next to each other, you know, what can you do? I know it's been hard,
They worked really, really hard.
yeah,
We didn't have many meetings though.
no, yeah,
Almost every day it looked like.
yeah, exactly. So I think, you know,
Wow.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
really
and again,
appreciate
thank
it.
you to both the other members of the committee, and thank you so much to Matt Carenti and Tim, and, oh boy, I know I'm forgetting people, but, you know, a lot of people. It wasn't just us. A lot
Yeah.
of people worked a lot of hours getting this together, so.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Yeah, this is really good news, and really, you know, appreciate everyone, everything everyone has done. It's definitely awesome.
We may actually be setting the bar. Chris has said that we may be the first, if we ratify, we may be the first in the state.
Awesome.
So,
Pretty cool. Phew. That'll, you know, the devil's, you know, we're waiting for that signature, but it'll definitely be a relief, you know, take a lot of pressure off. Finance committee, Chip.
Facilities.
Facilities, oh, I jumped, I'm sorry. F&F.
Facilities committee met on the 15th. I was reelected as chair. Our regular meetings are going to be Wednesdays, third Wednesdays of every month. Our main discussion revolved around incorporating equity into facilities planning. That's it.
Thank you. Finance.
Finance met, and like Jason, I was reelected as chair of that committee. We're going to meet the first Monday at 8:45 of each month, potentially more often in the budget season, but that's what we'll be doing. We had brief discussions relative to the audit. It took a long time. I mean, it was basically a clean audit. We discussed some of the management letters, places for improvement type of things, which are not necessarily report on this, but, we looked a little bit at sort of the budget calendar coming up, which always starts in the summer. But, you know, as you've said a lot, you know, we're gonna have to, these kinds of informations relative to negotiations and that, which has been hanging over things, is gonna be helpful as Matt particularly goes
Right.
forward, and all of us figure out how we need to become more lean, whatever that means, over the time frame.
Yeah, we passed our budget, but
Yeah,
it's,
just-
can't take it for granted, that's for
No,
sure.
if we knew why, we could package it. Those
And
folks
sell
that-
it.
Those folks that don't know why theirs failed,
Yeah.
they don't know
Repeatedly.
either. So, I mean, we're all in the same boat.
Oh, totally.
We're not having to deal with that acutely like the districts otherwise are. But everybody's gonna deal with it, and just even by the unknown with state funding and all,
Yes.
it's gonna be continuing bear, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chip. Policy.
The policy committee we met on April 3rd, so that means our meetings are tentatively set for the first Wednesday of the month, but we're already moving it to like the second Tuesday or something because of a scheduling snafu. It's myself, Steve, Laura, and Ellen. At our first meeting, we discussed 3 policies that were holdovers: A20, which is about board meetings, C9, which is a wellness policy, and E20, which is about community use of schools. And we'll probably, I don't know when, we'll probably be able to bring some of those to the board relatively quickly. I met with, people were meeting with Wendy. I met with Wendy a couple of days after the policy committee. She came there and has a lot of very keen interest in developing a policy structure with an ends policy. Some of you know what this is. I think the Hannaford, does the Career Center do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I became interested in this, started doing reading about it, and if people have feelings for or against, please let me know. But I think it dovetails with the discussion
Mark.
brought today, because it has a lot to do with, it's with goal, Wendy was talking a lot about having to do with goal establishment and then being able to measure the success or failure of meeting those goals. So that sounded interesting, so I might bring that up to the next meeting, which is May 7th.
And as a board education topic, I could definitely arrange to have the School Board Association come in and give us a tutorial on what policy governance is. This is really part of policy governance.
You mean the end specifically or in general?
Yes.
Yeah.
And kind of what that framework looks like and how does a board go about doing that. And so we could definitely schedule one of these, training things to have a presentation on policy governance.
We talked about this in the past.
Yes,
Several times.
yeah.
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
than once.
Yes, and but it's a new board, right? And
Oh,
so
I know.
it's definitely, because the ends policies basically identify what the superintendent's deliverables are and the expectations are. And so it's really pretty clear cut and you worked on that together. And so it really, I think personally, does clarify the roles pretty well when you move to that kind of a governance model. But, that's something down the road that we could definitely schedule and then decide as a board if that's something that we want to do or maybe in the future. Jason?
Can you spell that word that you're saying out?
ENDS.
ENDS,
Ends.
yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you what, there's a description on the School Board Association website. I'll send the link out to that so folks could read it. So I'll take an action item to do that. And that way we're kind of all coming from the same place. Okay, next is the CPAC. And Suzanne and Joanna are reps to CPAC.
I wasn't able to be there because I was negotiating, so hopefully Joanna was able to make it.
I was able to make this April's meeting. It was a pretty packed agenda. It's been a while since we've had a CPAC update. In March, there was Neurodiversity Celebration Week, and the CPAC took initiative to reach out to different schools and tried to offer some materials, and I'll let Mary jump in too, because she's part of developing those materials and sending them out. They also hosted a neurodiversity celebration event at the Marquee Theater, which was in place of the meeting. April's meeting, like I said, had a full agenda. On it included recap of the participation in the candidates for the special ed director for Laura Nugent's position. Also on it was a recap with the meeting with Wendy. And then also looking forward to the May and June meetings. Kind of the two end of the year meetings will encompass the annual report. I really hope there's an opportunity for CPAC to present at some point to the full board before summer, just because when summer happens, what's the point anymore? And then also the annual meeting, and I think there is hope to bring in a speaker with some substance to kind of bring people into that annual meeting, which will include like election of officers and different things like that. Did I say? Okay.
Thank you so much. Moving along, Middlebury Community TV, television, I'm the rep for that still. And a lot of the discussion that's been going on is kind of prepping for the Isley Library renovation and then
Ilsley.
Ilsley, I'm so sorry. Correct me. Yeah. Ilsley, sorry, library. And the other thing that will come up later in discussions is, potentially having the board have a financial obligation towards Middlebury Community TV, whatever that may look like. We can't really just give them money, so maybe we all have to pay for services or, something like that. But will be more to come on that. B, they're losing, a lot of their funding comes from cable contribution, and there's less cable these days as people move to high-speed internet, right, fiber, that kind of thing. So we actually may not be able to continue not to contribute in some way, however that may look like, if we choose to continue down that. There's a lot of stuff that happens in our schools around MCTV as well. So at some point, my guess is, there'll be a presentation. But I just want to, give you a heads up that that could be coming down the road. Parks and Rec, Mary Heather, I'm not sure if anything's happened there.
Yeah, actually, there was a meeting last week, and I don't think they have met in a good long while, in part because there has been some kind of reorg. And Lindsay had alluded to this a couple of times in her updates, but, and Tricia also serves on the Parks and Rec Committee, wearing her hat as a library representative. So Tricia, jump in if I get any of this incorrect.
Sure.
But Scott gathered us to kind of get everybody up to speed and on the same page. And part of that was just kind of a review of the history of what had happened over the past 2 years. Looks like Parks and Rec had been sort of reassigned to a different department within the town and now reports to, what is it? Basically, Public Works.
Yeah.
Oh,
And and so the board that originally was kind of an oversight body in some ways has been kind of reconfigured to be more of an advisory committee, if you will. And my understanding is that, the sort of budget oversight that the original board provided was a little bit redundant because the budget was sort of determined at the town level, and those sorts of details I'm not real familiar with, but I believe moving forward the plan is, to maintain, and Scott really advocated for maintaining this kind of advisory committee with all these different representatives, to continue to provide some voice into just Parks and Rec priorities and, making sure that all the different stakeholder perspectives are still folded into decision-making, but it's not really an oversight role. As far as I know, things are sort of going pretty swimmingly over there in terms of participation in and enrollment in programming, and the financial situation is very healthy. They have some projects coming up to rehabilitate the pool and the pool house, and oh goodness, I'm sure there's other things that I'm kind of missing, but the plan is to meet, initially Scott Bourne proposed quarterly. Several on the committee suggested maybe 6 times a year would be a little more appropriate, just to make sure that we can be good sort of liaisons and ambassadors for the Parks and Rec department, recognizing that, of course, Parks and Rec, although it is Middlebury Parks and Rec, it really does serve a much broader audience, and I think part of the work ahead is to kind of figure out how to make sure that the programming and things are accessible to everybody and equitable. So that seems to be something that everybody's interested in. And that's really all I had, and I guess I would just invite Tricia to jump in if I forgot anything.
Sounds like you got all the highlights, Mary Heather.
excellent, thank you. The head of her career center, and Steve and Tricia.
Well, I'll just say on a personal board level, as a heads up, students from the Career Center participated in Skills USA competition, including our student rep, Sophia Lawton, who got silver
Oh, wow,
in the
cool.
statewide competition for her work with human services and early childhood development. So next time you see or reach out to Sophia, please give her a pat on the back, because the Skills USA competitions are a big deal, and it's really great. A lot of the students who went to Skills USA actually ended up with medals, so the programs are doing really well.
I think we cleaned up Diesel, I think we did.
Yeah.
All three, first, second, third.
Yeah.
What was that, Steve? I didn't-
Diesel,
Swept it.
yeah, I think you got all three places on that one.
Oh, wow.
No, diesel, gold and silver, architectural drawing, silver, technical drafting, bronze, axis milling, bronze, advertising design, silver, early childhood education, silver, job skill demonstration, silver,
Wow.
related technical math, gold and bronze, teamworks, gold, and t-shirt design, gold. So, it's real solid programming, and it's awesome that the kids are showing so well on the state level. And last year we had several go to the nationals, which they also did well in.
The only other thing is that we're in the midst of superintendent evaluation, and I really am impressed with how robust the instrument is that we're looking at. It's going to go through policy committee, and it's going to get final board approval sometime soon. But I think it's a good. Judy Sklarstein helped us develop it, and everybody that knows Judy knows that she does good work.
Yeah.
And so hopefully, it's something we can look at with this board, because I think it's a good system. So.
I'll look forward to that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's premature. We are talking about another bond.
Oh, no.
The Career Center?
For one-time costs.
It's one-time cost.
One-time cost items.
All of the vehicles are failing. We have no transportation, and that's really important for the Career Center, and we don't have a transportation contract with anyone, so we're having vehicles break down on the side of the road, leaving kids stranded, and that's a bad situation.
Yeah.
Plus, the Career Center has a lot of expensive machinery that has never been replaced or depreciated, and some of that needs to. Some of it's really is past the end of its life, and it's impacting the programs. So we're thinking, it's still not done yet, but we have a bond retiring. Is the thing. We may replace it with another bond of a similar size to take care of those one-time needs.
Okay, well, keep us posted.
I know.
Thank you. And then next is Addison County VSBA Regional Representative, Suzanne. Anything you'd like to share with us?
Mark and I sent out a letter this evening from the VSBA. It's not the most exciting email. It talks about next steps with the AOE appointment for our Secretary of Education, and if the state statute does not clearly define what should happen if she doesn't get appointed.
Confirmed.
There's no passage there really, it's in the gray matter. VSBA has spent hours getting feedback and working on the yield bill. When it passed out of the House, it was at version 10. So Mark said he's listened to all of it, all 17 hours. I don't have 17 hours to sit and listen, so as the VSBA sends me updates, I try to keep up with them. There is a way that boards can help try to change things in Montpelier, and that's through the resolutions process. I sit on that committee, and so Addison Northwest presented a resolution to the VSBA last fall, which was approved, and that resolution was looking at all of the unfunded mandates and policy things that have come out of the AOE, and there's a lot.
Yes.
And so that's in a committee right now, they're working on it, and it's not just school board members that are on it. So they're looking at that and trying to figure out how to help the AOE with all of the stuff that they keep sending down and telling school districts and boards that they have to do, but sometimes with no directions on how to do it, you might say.
Yeah.
So we have that. We also have, we do have a legislative committee, but there's been so much happening so quickly that our legislative committee just doesn't meet. They're just sitting there in Montpelier doing it. Yeah, I think that's about all. I mean, we do our own board training monthly, so you guys aren't the only ones doing board training and education, we get it too, so. But we meet minimum once a month, but I sit on the legislative committee and on 2 other committees through there, so.
If, what would be the process, I know it's, right now is the resolution period where people are submitting ideas. Any suggestions, from an ACSD perspective, what we could or should be doing there?
I mean, some of the resolutions that have come through have been looking at public dollars to non-public schools, whether they be religious or others. Some have been around school calendars, because we do have some districts that share students across state borders. So how do you figure that out if, half your population comes from one state and the other half comes from another state? So the resolutions are all across the board, and they're stronger if you can get other districts to join you.
Definitely.
So, there's a link in the email that I sent out that I believe connects you up to all the current resolutions. You can read them and think about it. But yeah, if somebody would like to do one, I don't think ACSD is.
Yeah, or even join in and participate if we see one that someone's proposing. That's a great idea. So if you could keep us kind of in the loop on that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, we'll get them all. Normally what happens is that about a week before they're due, they all come flying in. So we normally don't really know what's in the works until they all appear.
Right.
So when they appear, I could say, hey, this one sounds interesting. Would you like to chat with the board that proposed it and sign on?
And then in the fall, when there's the kind of the annual conference, there's actual voting on those resolutions that happen. Okay, thank you, Suzanne. All right, next is public comment on any topic, and this is the time to invite folks to do that. Again, limiting our time to 3 minutes. So anyone in the room interested? Yes, and if
I
you
hope so.
yes, yes,
long,
and if you could state your name, please.
Leonard Barrett.
Hi, my name's Leonard Barrett. My wife is Linda. I think most of you know
Oh
Linda.
my gosh,
She
yes, of
retired
course.
clerk.
Yes.
And but we care about the schools. We have for a long time. We care about the kids. I was board chair. I was board member. I was for 10 and a half years. I sit right where you folks sit today. And then I took a job working with Sean over here at the high school. Wife and I both graduated from here. And we raised our family here. Our kids graduated from here. And when I was board chair, we came together as a community and sold this as one board. And people were asking, when will schools be closed? And I said, 4 or 5 years we'll start closing schools, you'll see it. And they said, okay. I was in charge of the one that put that straw poll together for Bridport, to find out how the community was feeling before we actually moved forward with that. And they voted 3-1, and I was shocked. That said, here we are. I don't know how many years it's been, 8, 9 years later here, and we, as a board, have not done nothing. I have heard of nothing. And I think it's past time to be something to being done here. I don't believe this community will support $100 million bond to fix all these schools up if you keep them open. I do believe, my personal opinion, I think there should be one school in this community for elementary. But that said, I can swallow two schools maybe staying open, but I think it's time for this board to make some sort of a decision moving forward. Don't let the voters start turning down budgets here, because Linda and I have counted votes for a long time. Either in Bridport, the high school, combination of the two. We've done it a long time, and this community has been very fortunate that budgets have passed. And I'd hate to see come to the point where you've got to start making a decision on what to do because they're turning down budgets. I don't want to be like the other schools. That said, I have 3 other topics because I got 3 minutes. So my second one is, I would personally like to put up another flagpole down here at the high school, and I'd like the American flag to fly by itself. The other flagpole that's there, and I would support, and I would buy this myself, I would raise the money, but the other flagpole there would be put there for, left there for whatever other flag was to be put on there. I don't care, but I want the American flag by itself. The other thing, I've had 2 parents call me. Linda and I talked about this one night, and the next day, 2 parents called me. I don't know why they called me, but they did. Pre-K. Why is there why are we got a waiting list for pre-K when there's 6 kids? Why is there a waiting list for pre-K kids when I've always been a believer that you should be grabbing them sooner than later? And why wait and pick and choose? Because these parents told me they're picking and choosing what kids they're taking, and I think that's a mistake right off. But that said, if there's 6 kids or 10 kids, I don't care what, put on another teacher or whatever you got to do. Don't let them kids go off to a private school. Let them stay here in a public school setting so that they can learn along with the other kids. Now, you've got good kids, you've got bad kids, you've got middle kids. It's just the way life is. So why are we doing that? And the thing that I'm most passionate about, you can even ask Peter Conlon, he used to be on this board, he was with me when I was there, but it's time for you guys to look at a turf field so we're not postponing games in the spring or in the fall, whatever, when Mother Nature. I'm not just asking for one type of turf field, I'm asking for a multi-purpose field so that if there's a game going on, we can play it instead of having to cancel or postpone to another, like last year. Month of May, we had a game every day. Every day we were doing games. And that's just a little bit much for the kids, and it's a little bit much for the help. And I just think that it's time for this board to take a look at that. I don't know how you handle it, but that's your headache. So I think that I've squeezed it in there, and I don't know how many minutes that was, but I tried to do it in 3 minutes. But I'd like to do a little longer on this school closure part here, but I put out what I was feeling. I just got to get off my chest because everything has been sitting there, and I've been wanting to come, but this school closure thing, it's time for something to be done there, because we did this in 15, I think we passed this in 15, and I got off the board that year because of the job opening with Sean, and I wanted to work with the kids, and I've been there with the kids ever since, and I'll give one big plus for this administration, the 3 of them down that school this year. They changed some rules, and it's much better for the kids. Now, I'm not saying school is perfect, but it's much better for the kids, it's much better for the teachers and administrators, and I've seen it. So they did a big thing down there this year on changing, holding people accountable, let's call it that. Holding people accountable, and they did a big thing down there, but I just think it's time. So thank you for your time. I've waited 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Thank you, thank you,
Just
thank
spit out
you.
that
Thank
3
you,
or 4
Lenny.
minutes, so.
Thank you for,
All right?
yeah, thank
Okay.
you for being patient and
All right.
waiting. Yes,
Thank you.
Take care.
Question? Question?
yes.
Is it possible for board members to make public comment in this section, or are they excluded?
Well, we really aren't public, we're the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not in this setting, I don't think.
Yeah.
So the answer is no at this point?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, if there's an agenda item that you want, you can send an email to the executive committee and we can consider that. And,
I just thought it'd be interesting in case somebody came up with some information that's not made in a motion,
Okay.
and it could be provided. But the opportunity is not there.
Okay. Yes.
Hi, I'm Mary Slozar of Waybridge. It was interesting to me tonight to hear Mark from Addison Northwest talk about communication, board communication and engagement, and to hear you all engage him on that topic too. And then Tricia, I know you all are revisiting this. And I just wanted to invite you all to reflect when you're looking at the the policies from VSBA and when the committee is thinking about this, about really whether or not this school board cares about informing and educating, which is a one-way street, or if you really value engagement, which is trying to hear the voice and the opinions of the community. And so it's really different. If you actually really want to hear from the community, then you need to make a really big effort to make that possible. And that is through your public comment policy. That is through the way you engage the community, going to them. If you want that voice, you've got to seek that voice, particularly when we've got such a diverse community in terms of ability and resources, transportation, and ability to engage you as a group. I think it's especially important given that we do not currently have an administration that has a family engagement, a real family engagement policy. There's no way for community members to engage the system except through you. So you have a particularly important role in that respect.
Thank you. And anyone on Zoom that's interested in making a comment? Please raise your Zoom hand if so. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is go into executive session to deal with personnel. And we need to give Jim time to pack up.
We also need to do a motion.
Yes, and we need to do a motion, right.
So while Jim is packing up, I can make the motion to go into executive session for 1 VSA section 313A3 for personnel.
Second.
Okay, excellent. And so we'll give him a few minutes.